Chapter 2802. The Holy Maiden's Fire of Jealousy. 2. This woman knows witchcraft and used all kinds of tricks to embarrass me in the pure night hall. I sent her into the unclean abyss, but she still came out alive. Ye Yun also said, this woman is really strange. Holy Maiden, please don't let her go so easily. Without needing Ye Shuang and Ye Yun's reminder, Ma Yinglan's gaze immediately fell on Mu Yen. Nothing else. Because the girl in front of her, who wore no makeup and whose clothes were stained with mud, was breathtakingly beautiful. Ma Yinglan herself was a top-notch beauty. When she saw other beauties, she naturally wanted to compare them. Before that, she had absolute confidence in her beauty. However, the moment she saw Mu Yen, her heart surged with jealousy and powerlessness. For the first time, Ma Yinglan didn't have absolute confidence in her appearance. Although her heart was in turmoil, Ma Yinglan's face was still calm. I didn't expect that the unparalleled unfettered seven of the continent would come to visit my northern continent. Mulu Pavilion didn't sweep the bed to welcome us, it was our negligence. Leng Yuma sneered, sweep the bed to welcome us. It's more like sweeping us into the unclean abyss. How dare you? Who allowed you to speak to the holy maiden like that? Chu Guangquan roared and was about to blow the lusheng in his hand. But Ma Yinglan gently waved her hand to stop him. Her expression didn't show the slightest bit of annoyance, and her eyes were still fixed on Mu Yen, especially Miss Qingqing Killer Monarch. I've been fascinated by your name for a long time. But Miss June's way of doing things isn't very honest. Mu Yen raised her brows. Oh, is that so? How am I not honest? Ma Yinglan said, you know that the northern continent doesn't like outsiders to disturb us, yet you sneaked in with unclear intentions. In the pure night hall, you caused trouble for no reason and trampled on Mulu Pavilion's reputation to build your reputation as a genius doctor. Now, you even brought out a blasphemer from the unclean abyss. May I ask if Miss June wants to consign my Horton tribe to eternal damnation? Chu Guangquan immediately shouted, it's not just that. Holy Maiden, they're even covering up for the bastards who stole the holy stones. You must recover our holy stones. Mei Lan was startled. She looked down and saw that Mu Yen was holding a small, strange spirit beast in her arms. Who else could it be but Qi Wen? Hearing Chu Guangquan mention her, Qi Wen immediately yelled, beast, beast, beast. That's enough. What a bunch of ignorant idiots. What holy stone? Do you really think I'm as ignorant as you? This is clearly a nightmare stone from the immortal cultivation continent. It simply doesn't belong to your cleansing Le Pavilion. You just happened to pick it up. As it says that, it raises its head to look pitifully at Mayan, Mei Yen Yen, this nightmare stone is of great use to master, you mustn't let this group of misers take it away. Mu Yen laughed and patted its head. When it came to pestering endlessly and making false accusations, if this fellow claimed to be number one, no one would dare claim to be number two. However, Qi Wen risked her life to snatch the nightmare stone, which meant that this thing was really important to little martial uncle. Mu Yen, Leng Yuma, and the rest looked at each other. Yes, for the sake of little martial uncle, they had no choice but to seize it by force and shamelessly for once. Ma Yinglan's face sank a little. When Leng Yuma was so rude before, she wasn't angry. When she realized that Mu Yan's appearance had surpassed hers, she didn't really get angry. But now, when she saw Qi Wen and Mu Yan's intimate actions, an indescribable anger surged in her heart. Chapter 2803. The Flames of Jealousy from the Saintess. 3. Hong Lan frowned slightly and said, Miss June, are you really determined to go against my cleansing Le Pavilion? Mayan smiles in surprise. If I say that I don't want to, would the Saintess believe me? Hong Lan said, then give me the soul crystal in your arms. No. Qi Wen grabs hold of Mayan's lapel, looking like she won't let go even if she dies. Mei Yen Yen, if you hand me over to them, I'm dead meat. Your name is Qi Wen, right? Hong Lan suddenly softened her tone and said to Qi Wen, don't you remember me? Chi Wen was taken aback and turned around to look at her. Several months ago, in an ancient ruin deep in the mountains, it was you and your master who saved me. Do you still remember? Chi Wen stared blankly for a long while before she said in a daze, "Ah, so it's you." In the process of Luo Yunxiao's search, he met too many women. Some of them had been rescued and followed him, some of them had tried every possible way to get information and waited for him, and some of them had followed him all the way from the town to the jungle. Chi Wen had seen too many of them. How could she remember them all? It was only because the place where it met Nightmare Bailan was relatively remote, and Nightmare Bailan's appearance was top-notch that it barely had an impression of her. It was really too much. However, Ma Yinglan thought that Chi Wen still remembered her, and a happy smile appeared on her face. She stretched out her hand, her voice becoming increasingly gentle as she said, "Young Master Yun Xiao saved me before, I will not repay kindness with ingratitude. I promise that as long as you bring the holy stone back with me, no one in Cleansing Joy Pavilion will hurt you. I will send someone to send a letter to your master. At that time, we can discuss how to deal with this matter, okay?" As soon as these words came out, not to mention Mu Yan and the others being shocked. Even the people of Cleansing Joy Pavilion looked at Yuan Shilan in disbelief. Only Dong Ling, who had always been by Bailan's side, came to a realization when she heard that Chi Wen was young Master Yun Xiao's spiritual beast. Mayan and the others look at each other in dismay. So this was the debt of youngest martial uncle's love life? Oh no. Their young martial uncle didn't need to be in debt to attract a bunch of peach blossoms. So this was another young girl in love who had been charmed by their young martial uncle. Everyone's gaze fell on Chi Wen. Military Orchid's eyes were filled with kindness, hope, and gentleness. With a wretched look on his face, Chi Wen touches his lower body. His large, bell-like eyes look at Mu Yan, and then at Hong Lan. Just when everyone was getting impatient, it suddenly shook its head resolutely. "No, no, I can't go back with you and walk right into your trap." "Why?" "I said I wouldn't." Tisk. Chi Wen rolled her eyes. "You think I don't know? You must have taken a liking to my master, that's why you're so nice to me. You really want to marry my master and be my mistress, right? Unfortunately, my master is already taken. In his heart, there is only beauty and beauty, not you. What if I fall into your hands and you use me to threaten my master to marry you? I'm an unyielding and loyal spiritual beast. How can I let you use me to destroy master and Mei Yanyan's lifelong happiness?" Kala. Mu Yan reaches out to pinch Chi Wen's neck, but she only manages to grab air. Chi Wen is very good at judging the situation. As early as halfway through her words, she was already ready to go. As soon as Mu Yan makes her move, she immediately escapes into Ling Yusheng's arms with lightning speed. Xiaowu, look, Mei Yanyan also thinks that destroying master's lifelong happiness is not good. Look, she's about to die from anger. Chapter 2804. The Holy Maiden's Fire of Jealousy. 4. Asking for votes. Ling Yusheng's mouth twitches. "You're the one who's going to piss off little junior sister." Len Yuma laughs. "Chi Wen, where did you get the face to say that you're unyielding and loyal?" Ha ha ha. Enough. Suddenly, An Lan's shout interrupts the laughter of the Xiao Yao sect people. Her face is as cold as frost as she stares at Mu Yan. "I'm talking to you nicely, but you really think that you can play around with Mu Lu Pavilion?" Mu Yan looks at An Lan, inexplicably sympathizing with her. The position of Mu Lu Pavilion's holy maiden must be high and aloof. In the end, Chi Wen revealed her daughter's secret in front of everyone, and was even spouted nonsense and despised by her. It's already not bad that An Lan can still maintain this kind of bearing. If it was her, she would definitely skin this lowly fellow alive. Mu Yan coughs lightly. "Don't listen to Chi Wen's nonsense, I and Gongzi Yun Xiao. Enough, I'm not interested in listening to you show off in front of me." Mu Yan is stunned. What am I showing off about? An Lan coldly says, I've heard about what the Xiaoyao 7 has done these days, and I admire you very much. Even if you came without permission and have impure motives, I don't want to make things difficult for you. But the premise of all this is that you don't harm Mulu Pavilion. If you still insist on going your own way, then don't blame me for being impolite. This is the final ultimatum. Hand over Qi Wen and the Holy Stone, then send these blasphemers back to the unclean abyss, and I'll pretend that everything that happened today never happened. Qi Wen tightly clings to Ling Yusheng's neck, crying, "Don't hand me over." Boo-hoo, I knew that women who hate because of love are the most terrible. You're the one who started all this. Ling Yusheng now understands why his little junior sister wants to strangle this guy. Compared to Qi Wen's affectation, when Huang Lang and the villagers of Yuanwu village are genuinely afraid. Their faces turn pale in an instant. Their trembling knees can no longer support them, and they fall to the ground. Goddess, we don't want to die. Mayan waves her hand, all right, stop howling. I've already saved you. If I let you die, wouldn't that be a waste of effort? Her tone was impatient, and there was even a hint of indifference in it. However, the people of Yuanwu village, who were scared out of their wits and filled with despair, seemed to have caught a duckweed. He looks at Mayan with complete trust and worship in his eyes. Even the instinctive reverence he had for the saintess of Mulu Pavilion had disappeared. In their eyes, there was only the fairy maiden, who had dragged them out of the quagmire of hell. Puff! Celestial maiden. Qi Wen burst out laughing. Can this name be any more unsophisticated? It's almost as good as those little girls calling Master Brother immortal. The corners of Mu Yan's lips curled up, and her eyes fell on Qi Wen. Qi Wen, have you ever heard Bai Xia say something? Looking at the girl's bright and beautiful smile, Qi Wen's body trembled inexplicably. What words? If you don't court death, you won't die. As soon as her voice fell, her slender white hand grabs the air, and Qi Wen is caught in it. Mei Yan Yan, spare my life. I just wanted to say that the fairy maiden is too vulgar, she's not worthy of you. Didn't that group of people from Hellflame Valley say that you have the title of the Enchantress of Medicine? Yes, the Enchantress of Cities, such a noble and elegant name, only it is worthy of you, Mei Yan Yan. Good night. Chapter 2805. Everyone in Yuanwu village stares blankly, then they repeat it, alluring Enchantress, Enchantress. Indeed, it sounds much better than the tacky immortal. Thinking so, everyone in Yuanwu village immediately kowtows again. Thank you, Enchantress, for saving our lives. Mu Yan facepalms. She's not interested in arguing with Qi Wen, so she just throws it aside. Then she looks at Hung Lan. If I say that I didn't want to make things difficult for Mulu Pavilion, I'm sure the saintess wouldn't believe it. But I'm sorry, I can't agree to either of your conditions. Hung Lan calmly nods, I expected it. Then, we'll rely on our own abilities. As soon as her voice falls, she quickly retreats, and at the same time, she shouts, punish the evil and collect the soul. Ye Yun and the other four move extremely fast. Almost as soon as Hung Lan gives the order, they're already flying in 5 different directions. There are cliffs on both sides of the mountain path. At this time, Ye Shuang, Ye Shui, Ye Feng, and Ye Yu have 1 foot on the cliff. Their bodies lean forward, and the instruments in their hands suddenly start playing. Ye Yun has already reached the entrance of the mountain path. The pipa in her hand plays, producing a sad and lingering melody. At the same time, the 5 melodious harmonies resound. Chu Guangxuan and his men also soar into the sky, blocking the land and the sky in all directions. Leng Yuma pulls out the red lotus soul-stealing knife, eager to try. Previously in the snow demon forest, they clearly had enough fighting power, but they were knocked down by the array. Now that they have their little junior sister, they're not afraid of any array. They can finally fight to their heart's content. The people of the Xiaoyao sect are full of fighting spirit, ready to go. Only Mu Yen slightly frowns, her fingers lightly playing in the void, calculating the position of Ye Yun, Chu Guangquan, and the others, and the song they're playing. A faint bad premonition floats in her heart. This array that's about to be completed is, the next moment, they hear the ethereal sound of a harp. It's the only missing link in the array. Oh no! Mu Yen suddenly realizes and quickly summons the Tian Mo Qin. However, she's still one step too late. Countless rays of light shoot out from the instruments played by the people of Mu Lu Pavilion, forming a net of light in the sky. Along with the sound of the sea harp. This deathly still net of light seemed to be endowed with life as it suddenly fell downwards. Ah dash! Help! The net of light did not touch the 5 people of the Xiaoyao sect, who were ready to attack, but it trapped the villagers of Yuanwu village and Wenhuanglang. Leng Yuma suddenly turned around, her face full of astonishment and anger. Damn it, you guys actually cheated. She furiously raised the Red Lotus soul-stealing saber, and was about to chop it down. Without changing her expression, she plucked the strings of the solitary snow and said coldly, "Fellow Taoists of the Xiaoyao sect, you'd better not act rashly. Otherwise, the myriad evil-slaying net will shred the bodies and souls of these blasphemers into pieces." The moment, icy snow solitude, rang. The net of light that bound the villagers of Yuanwu village immediately tightened. In a split second, 2 villagers let out pained howls. One of them was a little girl who was only about 10 years old. Her delicate and pretty face just happened to be attached to the net, and a few cuts appeared in a split second. The little girl cried out in fear and pain, "Fairy sister, save me. I don't want to die, I don't want to become ugly." When Huanglang's body also suffered a few cuts. Chapter 2806. But when Huanglang didn't care about the pain in his body or the fear of death. He looked at Yuan Lan angrily. As the saintess of Mu Lu Pavilion, you used the lives of the old, weak, women, and children of the Horton tribe to threaten foreign cultivators. What right do you have to be respected by us? What right do you have to control our lives? Yuan Lan looked at the little girl who was crying to Mu Yen for help. She was stunned, and a trace of pity flashed across her eyes. But it was soon replaced by a stone-hearted determination. She said coldly, "Blasphemers are sinful souls abandoned by God. Only when they die can the whole tribe not be implicated. I did nothing wrong. But they are not the real blasphemers." When Huanglang roared in anger. They were framed and sent to the temple for no reason. And as you can see, they are fine now. What right do you have to decide their life and death? Just because you are the high and mighty saintess? Before Yuan Lan could answer, Ye Shuang had already spat and said arrogantly, "So what if they were framed? As long as they are sent to the unclean abyss for more than a day, the God Slayer Witch will invade their souls and bones, and they will never be able to get rid of it. They look like normal people now, but who can guarantee that the God Slayer Witch in their bodies won't act up one day? Can you bear the responsibility if the whole tribe is implicated? So we deserve to die innocently." The villagers of Yuanwu village couldn't bear it anymore and burst into tears. "We used to believe in the fairy Mulu goddess. No matter how little we got every year, we would go to the Wangyin Bazaar to offer tributes to the saintess and Mulu Pavilion and pray devoutly. But what did we get in exchange? Were they abandoned like trash over and over again?" Ye Shuang smiled disdainfully. "Who can you blame? You can only blame yourselves for being unlucky and becoming blasphemers. Since you are despised by God, don't you deserve to end up like this?" The angry roars of the villagers turned into desperate whimpers. Mu Yan's face slowly darkened. She looked at Yuan Lan and said calmly, "I have a way to completely get rid of the God Slayer Witch in their bodies." "Huh?" Ye Shuang laughed. "Are you kidding? Get rid of the God-killing witch in their bodies? How could you tell such a lie?" Ye Yun said with a solemn expression, "Saintess, we don't have to be polite with them. If the holy stone has been in their hands for too long, I'm afraid there will be changes if we delay. Hong Lan nodded slightly. He put away all the pity in his eyes and gently touched the snow solitude with his finger. The 10,000 evil-slaying net tightened again. This time, the villagers of Yuanwu village were already wailing in pain. Some of them even had their tongues hanging out of their mouths. Their eyes were rolling back and they were panting painfully as if they would stop breathing at any time. Hong Lan said, "We'll talk about whether you can get rid of the ice and snow solitude later. Now, please return the holy stone of Mulu Pavilion. Otherwise, you won't even have the chance to convince me to let you treat them. I'll count to 3. The faces of Mu Yan and the others darkened. However, he still quickly turned his gaze towards Qi Wen. Compared to some nightmare stone, human lives were obviously more important. If little Marshal Uncle wanted the nightmare stone, they would think of a way to get it later. Qi Wen whimpered. She was extremely unwilling and extremely depressed. It was as if one person alone could shoulder all the dangers and the lives of each and every one of them. Divine hands weaving the heavens, activated. Star curtain, activated. Cloud sky net, activated. The third layer of star domain, activated. The rousing sound of the zither blends all of Mayan's spiritual power and converges into a wall of sound. It replaces the original barrier and blocks the black fog. But it was not enough. The black mist in the untainted abyss was too powerful. The array that Mayan hastily created simply couldn't withstand it. Her face turns pale inch by inch, and even her lips lose their last trace of blood. Chapter 2808. However, it was still unable to stop the black fog that was surging over. Mu Yan's eyes turned cold. The 7 absolute swords flew out of her body and turned into 7 colorful swords. They directly formed a sword net in front of the black fog. However, the 7 absolute's sword was her natal sword. When the black fog attacked the 7 absolute's sword, it was also attacking her origin and spirit. Mu Yan spits out a mouthful of blood. However, he did not take a single step back. When the villagers of Yuanwu village saw this, tears streamed down their faces. Miss June. When Huang Lang screamed, "Hurry up and leave, don't worry about us." That's right, fairy maiden. It doesn't matter if Xiao AI dies. Xiao AI's life isn't worth your life. Damn it. Len Yuma cursed, what are we still standing there for? Hurry up and help little junior sister. As he spoke, he lifted the red lotus soul-snatching saber and rushed forward. Ling Yusheng's speed is even faster than her. In the blink of an eye, he has already arrived at Mayan's side. Qin Jiu and Chu Moli were next. A trace of hesitation flashed through Chu Moli's eyes. However, in the end, he still took out a silver longbow and slowly pulled the strings of the zither towards the black mist. Seeing Mayan's group of 5 recklessly blocking the black mist from the untainted abyss, Hong Lan was in a daze, unable to come back to his senses. She subconsciously wanted to strum the harp and rush forward, but was held back by Ye Yun and Chu Guangquan. Saintess, be careful. The unclean abyss is rioting. It's too dangerous here. We must leave immediately with the Saint Stone. But if the god-slaying shamans from the pure abyss don't come out, the entire Horton tribe will be in danger. The Cleansing Delight Pavilion was supposed to be the guardian of the northern continent. But now, a few foreign cultivators were risking their lives for the safety of the Horton tribe, while they fled. How could this be justified? Chu Guangquan's eyes were very calm. He said lightly, this is not the first time the unclean abyss is rioting, but as long as the holy stone is enshrined in the God-praying tower, the rioting will not last long. At most, the surrounding villages will suffer. Ye Yun added, compared to the lives of a few villagers, your safety and the holy stone are more important. That's right, Saintess, let's go back quickly. We must prioritize cleansing Le Pavilion. Hearing that cleansing Joy Pavilion had to be prioritized, Only then did Blue Orchid slowly calm down. She clenched her fists and told herself over and over again, yes, Mula Pavilion is the most important. As long as the Cleansing Delight Pavilion remained strong, it could protect the entire tribe and ensure peace and tranquility in the northern continent. The sacrifice of a few villages and a few hundred civilians was worth it. As she thought of this, her expression turned cold. He reached out to grab the Saint Stone on Qi Wen's claw. In the entire Cleansing Joy Pavilion, she was the only one who did not suffer too much of a backlash when she touched the Saint Stone with her bare hands. Qi Wen came back to her senses and realized that the people of the Carefree sect were in danger, and this danger was caused by the Nightmare Stone. It let out a loud cry and was about to retrieve the Nightmare Stone. Bastard, you want to go back on your word? If you don't hand over the Saint Stones, I'll take your dog life. Chu Guangquan furiously raised his lusheng and smashed it towards Qi Wen. Qi Wen was startled, and she hurriedly enlarged her body in an attempt to dodge. Unexpectedly, Chu Guangquan's lusheng accidentally smashed onto the boulder. The Nightmare Stone flew towards the unclean abyss. In a split second, the black mist that was originally suppressed by Mayan and the others was like a water surface that had a boulder thrown into it, turning into raging waves. Mayan's complexion changed greatly. She raised her hand and the sound of the zither rang out, pushing Len Yuma and the others away. Chapter 2809. It's already too late for Mayan to dodge, so she simply clenches her teeth and no longer retreats. Isn't it just a god-punishing shaman? Do you think she's afraid? Junior sister. However, the expected impact of the rancid black fog did not come. Instead, it was replaced by countless sharp swords that pierced through the clouds like a scorching sun. It's just that these swords are so sharp, but they all brushed past Mayan's figure, not even scratching her clothes. Mayan stares blankly. This sword intent, this aura, it's so familiar. Young martial uncle. The swords dissipate, and the young man's figure slowly descends from the sky, guarding in front of Mayan. In a split second, there's a deathly silence. Today, Luo Yunxiao is wearing a snow-white robe, with ice blue embroidered edges. Her long hair, like a waterfall, is casually tied up with a white ribbon. The black silk satin flutters in the wind, lacking the gentle, jade-like gentlemanly style, but with an even more bewitching and elegant appearance. Clang! The harp in Yishuang's hand isn't steady, and directly smashes to the ground. There's actually such a graceful and peerless man in this world. Ye Yun's eyes turn to Hong Lan. She sees that the solitary snow and ice in Hong Lan's hand has disappeared, and her eyes are fixed on Luo Yunxiao, as if she has lost her soul. Solitary snow and ice is linked to Hong Lan's divine soul. Once her mind becomes unstable, she will return to Hong Lan's Qiankuan sleeve. Ye Yun looks at Luo Yunxiao again. She sees that he's actually holding Mulu Pavilion's holy stone. If an ordinary person touched the holy stone with their bare hands, their mind would become unstable and they would be in unbearable pain. But Luo Yunxiao seems to be fine. And the holy stone, which would shake violently in other people's hands and emit bursts of black gas, seems to have met its nemesis. In Luo Yunxiao's hand, it's as quiet as a real lifeless stone. Even the black fog that gushes out from the unclean abyss. After the holy stone calms down, it scrambles to return to the barrier. Ye Yun is instantly excited. Young Master Yunxiao can actually control the holy stone like the saintess. No, how can he only control the holy stone? He can even stop the riot of the unclean abyss. Such an outstanding man, who is also the saintess's favorite, if he can marry into Mulu Pavilion. Wouldn't that be the best of both worlds? Given the Holy Lady's looks and the status of the Cleansing Joy Pavilion, young Master Yunxiao must have wished for nothing more than to be able to gain the Holy Lady's favor. Coincidentally, at this moment, Hong Lan could not help but take a few steps forward and called out softly, "Young Master Yunxiao." Ye Yun looked at her holy daughter's eyes that were filled with affection and her snow-white cheeks were slightly red. She felt a surge of excitement in her heart. Blue Billows was simply too beautiful. She knew that no man would be able to refuse. After taking control of the Nightmare Stone, Luo Yunxiao turns to look at Mayan. How are your injuries? Mayan revolves her spiritual power, wiping the blood from the corner of her mouth. It's nothing. Fortunately, Junior Martial Uncle came in time. Although she was not afraid of the god execution shaman. However, after her spiritual power was exhausted, she could not stop the black mist gushing out of the unclean abyss. If that happened, the villagers of Yuanwu village and the surrounding northern continent cultivators would suffer. Nonsense. Luo Yunxiao suddenly raised her voice. Her usually indifferent and cold face shows a rare uncontrollable anger. Again and again, do you not care about your own safety? Mayan stares blankly at Luo Yunxiao's angry face, somewhat unable to come back to her senses. This is the first time she has seen her junior martial uncle so angry at her. For a moment, she is somewhat dumbfounded. Chapter 28:10. Luo Yunxiao, speak. Oh, I know I was wrong. Mayan cautiously replied, young martial uncle, don't be angry. Luo Yunxiao's hands tightly clenched and loosened in his sleeves. After repeating this several times, he was able to suppress the anger and fear in his heart. The trembling of his body, and the thoughts that he had been carefully concealing, did not completely leak out. Young Master Yunxiao. An ethereal and sweet voice broke the oppressive atmosphere of this demon person. Hong Lan half raised his head, his eyes as clear as water, as if reflecting bits of starlight as he looked at Luo Yunxiao. Do you still remember me? In the ancient ruins of the western continent, it was you who saved my life. If you hadn't helped me at that time, I might not have been able to return to Mulu Pavilion alive. The interruption of this voice forced Luo Yunxiao to restrain his emotions. Mayan Kuang breathed a sigh of relief, inwardly praising the holy maiden of Mulu Pavilion for saving him from the fire and water. Young martial uncle's expression just now was too scary. She felt that in the next moment, a terrible punishment would be spat out from those thin lips. Even if she didn't die, she would still lose a layer of skin. Luo Yunxiao forcibly suppressed the depression in his heart, and when he looked at Hong Lan, he had already recovered his usual indifference. It's no trouble at all. For you, it's no trouble at all, but for me, it's a kindness that I will remember for a lifetime. Hong Lan bit his lower lip, his gaze falling on the nightmare stone in his hand. Young Master Yunxiao, I don't know why you need the holy stone. If this holy stone was mine, I would not hesitate to offer it to you if you wanted it. However, the holy stone belongs to Mulu Pavilion, and it is very important to us. I am very sorry, but I have to ask you to return my clan's holy stone. Luo Yunxiao stared blankly, looking down at the nightmare stone in his hand. He only hesitated for a moment, then reached out and handed it back to Hong Lan. Master, don't I stole this with great difficulty. Qi Wen's clamoring abruptly stopped under Luo Yunxiao's cold gaze. It shrunk its neck and no longer dared to clamor, only muttering a few words unwillingly. Hong Lan looked down. Under the sunlight, a slender jade-like hand with well-proportioned joints brought the reddish-brown nightmare stone to her. Hong Lan's heart was thumping hard and her face was red. She couldn't summon the courage to reach out and take it for a long time. Young Master Yunxiao, it's not impossible if you really want this saint stone. Ye Yun's smiling voice suddenly interrupted, the holy stone is very precious to our cleansing joy pavilion. Even the elders and I don't have the qualifications to touch it. However, the saintess is different. The saint's stones are usually kept by her. In this world, other than the saintess, who else can touch and use the holy stone at will is the husband of the saintess. Ye Yun raised her head and looked at Luo Yunxiao's handsome face. The more she looked at him, the more satisfied she felt. I wonder if young Master Yunxiao has the intention to marry into my cleansing joy pavilion and become the sacred lady's husband. Hong Lan's face turned red, and she hurriedly cried out, Ye Yun, don't talk nonsense. As soon as these words came out, everyone was shocked. Mayan's mouth gapes wide open, unable to close it for a long time. Just now, he was scared out of his wits by little martial uncle's anger, causing his spiritual sense to go haywire. Only now can he see that the saintess of Cleansing Joy Pavilion likes little martial uncle. Leng Yuma and the others stared blankly for a moment, then suddenly jumped up from the ground. Marry into Cleansing Joy Pavilion? What kind of joke is this? Why should our little martial uncle marry into your Cleansing Joy Pavilion? Chapter 28:11. Yeah. Who do you think you are? So what if she's the saintess? Our junior martial uncle is the #1 swordsman in the cultivation world and the most handsome man in the world. If your holy daughter wants to marry into our Xiaoyao school, we'll have to see if she's good enough. Mu Yan nodded repeatedly. She approached Luo Yunxiao and said, Junior martial uncle, you mustn't take things too hard and marry into our family. The tradition of the Xiaoyao sect is to marry into the family. Luo Yunxiao raised her hand and knocked her on the head. What nonsense are you talking about? She said angrily. His tone was unkind, but there was a tenderness in his eyes that could not be dispelled. Others might not be able to tell. However, Yuan Sherlan, who had been watching Luo Yunxiao, saw it clearly. The joy he felt when he found out that Luo Yunxiao is Mayan's little martial uncle, all of a sudden, it completely dissipates. Her heart felt as if it had been pricked by a needle, and it was tingling faintly. Luo Yunxiao's hand continued to move forward, without any intention of withdrawing. He didn't want to accept Ye Yun's proposal at all. In other words, he didn't even think about marrying her. Just like when they were in the ruins, he had never taken her seriously. Tears welled up in Yuan Sherlan's eyes. This was the first time she liked a man. I thought the taste of love is sweet. But it turned out to be so bitter and sorrowful. Mei Lan took a deep breath, forcing back the tears in her eyes, and reached out to take the nightmare stone from Luo Yunxiao's hand. Ye Yun's expression was extremely gloomy. His cheeks were burning as if someone had slapped him hard. She gritted her teeth and said, Young Master Yunxiao, what do you mean? Could it be that you think that the saintess of my Cleansing Le Pavilion is not worthy of you? Luo Yunxiao replied indifferently, I'm grateful for your kindness, but I don't have such intentions. You. Ye Yun, enough. Jin Lan shouted hoarsely, gripping the nightmare stone tightly. Let's go. Wait, holy maiden. Chu Guangquan suddenly said, even if the holy stone has been returned, these blasphemers have not been dealt with. This is a huge threat to the entire northern continent. Hong Lan's footsteps paused and she turned around. The net of light on the villagers of Yuanwu village disappeared after the music stopped. However, the coldness and ruthlessness of the people of Cleansing Joy Pavilion and Ban Lan had left a deep impression on them. At this time, seeing that Hong Lan is looking over, these villagers immediately hide behind Mu Yan in panic. Chu Guangquan stepped forward, saying coldly, the saintess of the blasphemers must be eliminated. Ye Yun had just witnessed her holy maiden being humiliated and rejected, so she was fuming with rage. Hearing this, he immediately took out his pipa and said coldly, People of the Xiaoyao sect, are you going to continue to protect these blasphemers and cause trouble for the northern continent? Mu Yan feels that a small hand is fiercely gripping the hem of her clothes. His tiny body pressed against hers, trembling incessantly. Should we die? The little girl didn't know what a blasphemer was, but she did know that in the northern continent, it was an existence that everyone wanted to kill. Mu Yan reaches out to stroke her hair, softly saying, Of course not, there has never been a blasphemer in this world. Mu Xiaoyao's eyes brightened. The little girl's eyes lit up for a moment before dimming again. But the people in the tribe say that the saintess is supreme and is the messenger of God. We have always believed in the saintess and revered her. My greatest wish is to become a maid in the saintess temple. Chapter 28:12. But now, the holy maiden says that the people in our village are blasphemers and should die. We clearly didn't do anything. Mu Yan looks up at Jin Lan, her eyes heavy. Jean Lan feels as if these eyes can see through her soul, leaving her with nowhere to hide. She panics and suddenly raises her voice. Do you think that you are very kind, protecting innocent villagers? But have you ever thought that if you let these people live, the Horton tribe, and even the entire northern continent will die? You don't know what a real blasphemer is, yet you insist on saving them. In the end, the entire northern continent is in a desperate situation because of these blasphemers, but you just walk away. Jun Mu Yen, aren't you being hypocritical? Mu Yen frowns and is about to speak. Suddenly, a clear and deep male voice comes from beside her. Then do you know where the blasphemers of the northern continent come from? When you accuse others, have you ever thought about the source of the blasphemer's sin? Jean Lan stares blankly, looking at Luo Yunxiao. What do you mean by this? Luo Yunxiao raises his hand in the air. The nightmare stone that Jean Lan had put away in her sleeve unexpectedly flies out on its own and into Luo Yunxiao's hand. Holy stone! Luo Yunxiao, what are you doing? Quickly return the holy stone to us. Luo Yunxiao gently twirls the holy stone with her fingers, revealing a mocking smile. Do you know where this stone came from? Jean Lan suppresses the trembling in her voice, raises her head, and says in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, I know, Chiwen said that this stone fell from the Shoshian continent. But my Mulu pavilion has owned it for hundreds of years. Everyone in the Horton tribe worships it, offers sacrifices to it, and obtains energy from it. We have already regarded it as our own holy stone. Do you want to take it away just because you say that it came from the Shoshian continent and doesn't belong to us? Leng Yuma sneers, if my young martial uncle wanted to take it away, he wouldn't have returned it to you. Gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. Jean Lan's face turns green and white, but she grits her teeth and stubbornly looks at Luo Yunxiao. Luo Yunxiao lightly says, I didn't want to say these things, but what, he didn't say. But Yuan Sherlan understood. Because she called out Mayan's hypocrisy, because she fiercely humiliated Mayan with her words, she angered this man. Hong Lan gritted her teeth and slightly raised her chin. Her pride did not allow her to cry, nor did it allow her to beg for love. Luo Yunxiao said, in the Shoshian continent, there is a huge barrier that covers the entire continent. Every once in a while, cracks will appear on the barrier, and countless monsters that only know how to devour flesh and blood will pour out from the cracks. These monsters are formidable and possess lethal poison within their bodies. Moreover, they can be reborn without limit. If they're allowed to wreak havoc in the world, then the three dimensions would be instantly destroyed. These monsters are called nightmare ghosts. Hong Lan's eyes widened in shock. She suddenly recalled that Chiwen had mentioned that the sacred stone of their cleansing Lu pavilion was called the Nightmare Stone. Our saint's stone, is it related to this poltergeist? Luo Yunxiao nodded. 1,000 years ago, the Shoshian continent experienced a great upheaval, and the barrier was deliberately torn apart by someone. Chapter 28:13. A giant poltergeist ghost came out of the crack. Its strength surpassed all the great powers of the Shoshian continent at that time. It massacred countless people and corpses littered the land. It was only after the abbot of Debiai Temple risked his life to kill it that it finally found peace. The Nightmare Stone was dropped by the poltergeist ghost after its death. To the people of the Shoshian continent, the Shoshian continent was a distant and superior existence. 99% of the people here lived less than 100 years and could never reach the tribulation passing stage. Even if they could reach the tribulation passing stage, they wouldn't be able to attract the lightning tribulation, let alone ascend. In the eyes of the people of the Shoshian continent, the people of the Shoshian continent were superior immortals. They were rulers who could crush ants like them with a single finger. However, such an unreachable immortal realm had actually suffered a calamity before. How powerful was the poltergeist ghost that could almost destroy the entire Shoshian continent? Hearing this, Yuan Lan was shocked. She couldn't help but look at Luo Yunxiao's handsome face. Why was he so familiar with the Shoshian continent? compared to Yuan Lan's shock. Ye Yun and Chu Guangquan were excited. Their eyes fell on the nightmare stone in Luo Yunxiao's hand, greed and desire in their eyes. The nightmare stone left behind by the poltergeist ghost that even the great powers of the Xiuxian continent couldn't resist. What kind of rare treasure was that? Their Mulu pavilion was indeed blessed by the heavens to be able to obtain a treasure like the nightmare stone. Ye Yun said, "Young Master Yunxiao, what do you mean by this? Even if the poltergeist ghost was violent when it was alive, it's dead now. Isn't it natural for the nightmare stone it left behind to be used by others?" "That's right." Chu Guangquan sneered, "Young Master Yunxiao, please don't quibble anymore. Aren't the inner cores of those man-eating beasts still able to save lives and increase cultivation? Why can't we use the nightmare stone? If you really covet the nightmare stone and want to steal it, just say it. Why do you have to pretend?" The people of the Xiaoyao sect were furious at being slandered like this. Even Mu Yan's expression darkened. Only Luo Yunxiao's expression remained calm from beginning to end. 1,000 years ago, when the poltergeist ghosts had just been exterminated, someone in the Xiuxian continent had already discovered the usefulness of the nightmare stone. Mortals, cultivators, immortal cultivators, devil cultivators, and even god cultivators can use nightmare stones to increase their strength in a short period of time. Moreover, unlike medicinal pills, the nightmare stone's effect on a person's strength is vast and limitless. As long as we pay a sufficient price, we can even create an invincible army. The more Chu Guangquan and Ye Yun listened, the more excited they became. The invincible and invincible army. Wasn't this the goal of the Cleansing Joy Pavilion? What they wanted was not just to live in a corner of the northern continent, but to accumulate enough power to take over the entire cultivation continent. At that time, all the resources in the world would belong to them. How far would it be to transcend the tribulation and ascend? Luo Yunxiao seemed to have seen through their thoughts as a trace of ridicule flashed across her eyes. If the nightmare stone was truly perfect and heaven-defying, why would the people of the Xiuxian continent allow it to wander to the Xiuxian continent? When the usefulness of the nightmare stone was discovered, a high monk from the Debii temple prophesied that it would be inauspicious and urged everyone not to use it. However, in the face of benefits and power, how many people would listen to such advice? Chapter 28:14. The nightmare stone passed through many hands and was finally picked up by a lucky, second-rate family head. He hid the nightmare stone in a secret place that was blocked by a barrier and used the nightmare stone to continuously produce powerful immortals. In a short 10 years, this second-rate family's power grew to the point where it could contend against the three major powers of the Xiuxian continent, the polar domain, the nether domain, and the demon race. Hong Lan couldn't help but ask, what happened to this family? What happened? Luo Yunxiao smirked. The family head was dreaming of dominating the Xiuxian continent and even started to invade the polar domain when the nightmare stone suddenly backfired. Everyone in this family became mindless, spiritless, soulless, and filled with killing intent. They became monsters that thirsted to devour flesh and blood. In other words, they all became starved ghosts. Hong Lan's pupils constricted and she unconsciously took a step back. No, impossible. You're talking nonsense. Chu Guangquan was stunned at first, then he flew into a rage. Luo Yunxiao, don't try to mislead people. My Cleansing Joy Pavilion has obtained the holy stone for hundreds of years and no one has ever become a starved ghost. Luo Yunxiao sneered, that's why I just asked, what do you think blasphemers are? Mindless, spiritless, and in the end, even their souls would dissipate and they would become monsters that only knew how to devour flesh and blood. Once bitten by such a monster, they would be infected and become a new monster. Hong Lan's face turned pale and her body swayed. It was as if a belief that she had guarded for a lifetime had completely collapsed at this moment. So you're saying that there are no blasphemers at all? When Huang Lang looked at Luo Yunxiao in a daze, the so-called blasphemers, from the beginning to the end, are just sacrifices to increase their own power. How can this be? In Yuanwu village, an old man with red eyes shouted, "Then what about my son who was sent to the unclean abyss after participating in the worship ceremony? I thought it was because he committed a sin in his previous life that he was rejected by the gods in this life. But now you're telling me that all of this is just a scam. Give me back my son. Give me back my son." The old man charged at Chu Guangquan as if he had gone mad, his skinny and powerless hand desperately trying to grab Chu Guangquan's neck. However, Chu Guangquan waved him lightly, and he fell to the ground. "Grandpa!" Xiao Ai rushed over to help the old man up and burst into tears. "Father! Father, return my father to me. You are all scoundrels, Mulu Pavilion is full of scoundrels. I don't want to worship the saintess anymore. Woo woo woo." Some people in the crowd could not help but cry out loud. "And my husband. My husband also became a blasphemer during the sacrifice. My daughter, my poor daughter, do you hear? You're not a blasphemer at all. I'm useless, I couldn't protect you back then, boo-hoo." The entire place was filled with crying sounds, causing the faces of the people of Cleansing Lu Pavilion to turn extremely ugly. Chu Guangquan's eyes were filled with murderous intent. He raised his hand and signaled to the people below. However, before they could make a move, Mayan swings the seven absolute sword in the air, drawing a beautiful arc, and coldly says, "What? You realize that you can't hide your scandal anymore, so you want to silence me?" Chu Guangquan said angrily, "Don't talk nonsense. What is the meaning of your Xiaoyao school? You came to my northern continent to mislead people with your fallacious words and ruin the reputation of my Mulu Pavilion. Do you really think that there's no one in my northern continent?" Chapter 28:15. Yishuang said, "Pft, what proof do you have that our saint stones are nightmare stones? My Cleansing Lu Pavilion has been offering sacrifices to the holy stone for 100 years, and we are still living in harmony. The family that you mentioned was defeated in 10 years. How can the two be compared?" Leng Yuma rolled her eyes. "Idiot, didn't you hear what my junior master said just now? Nightmare stones had to pay a certain price before they could display their corresponding abilities. You are just cultivators, but that family is made up of immortals. Can the price paid by both sides be the same?" Ling Yusheng nodded and said, "Not suffering a backlash in the past 100 years doesn't mean there won't be a backlash. It's just that the nightmare stone hasn't gathered enough energy. Isn't the best proof that the symptoms of the blasphemers you speak of exactly the same as the poltergeist ghosts?" Chu Guangquan waved his sleeve and said loudly, "I won't argue with you. Young Master Yun Shao, if you still have a little bit of shame, quickly return our Mulu Pavilion's holy stone. Also, these blasphemers are members of the Horton tribe. It is our freedom to deal with them as we see fit. Could it be that you, the unfettered seven, are already so overbearing to the point of interfering with the matters of others' clans?" Mu Yan looks at his uncontrollable anger and slightly narrows her eyes. "Don't tell me you already knew about the side effects of the nightmare stone and the blasphemers?" Chu Guangquan was stunned, and a wisp of astonishment and terror flashed swiftly in his eyes. But it's quickly covered up by flustered and exasperated anger. "Jun Mayan, I'm warning you, if you dare to spout venomous slander again, don't blame my Mulu Pavilion, it seems that you really know." Mu Yan sneered. Then, he seemed to have thought of something and slowly shook his head. "No, not just that. The so-called blasphemers and the so-called unclean abyss were all created by your Cleansing Joy Pavilion. This was to provide enough energy for the Nightmare Stone. This is the price you have to pay for using the Nightmare Stone, am I right? You're courting death." Chu Guangquan abruptly took out the lusheng and placed it next to his mouth. His spirit energy surged. Ear-piercing music resounds, and in a split second, it turns into hundreds of sound blades that fly towards Mayan. Mayan sneers, "You want to silence me just because you've been right? That depends on whether you have the ability or not." Before her voice falls, the Tian Mo Qin is already floating in front of her. His slender fingers plucked the strings lightly. Sound blade, activated. If Chu Guangquan's sound blade attack was like 100 arrows being shot at the same time, Mu Yan's, zither sound blade, was a rain of swords, an inescapable net. Ah! Chu Guangquan didn't even have time to react before his sound blades were completely shattered in the air. His body felt as if it was being sliced by 1,000 blades. In an instant, blood spurted out. It made him howl like a pig being slaughtered. Leng Yuma laughed mischievously, "You're very bold to compete with my junior sister in musical attack." Ling Yusheng, he died a horrible death too. The arrogant Chu Guangquan fell to the ground with a thud and lay in a pool of blood, unable to get up for a long time. Elder Chu. The people of Mulu Pavilion rushed over to help Chu Guangquan up. He glares at Mayan, "Jun Mayan, you actually dared to make a move." Mu Yan brushes off the dust on her clothes. "If I don't make a move, am I supposed to let him hit me? I'm sorry, but the Xiaoyao sect doesn't have the habit of taking a beating without fighting back. We only believe that if people don't offend us, we won't offend them." Mulan takes out the solitary ice and snow, playing the ethereal sound of the zither. Countless rays of light fall on Chu Guangquan's body. Chapter 28:16. The wounds on Chu Guangquan's body stop bleeding at a speed visible to the naked eye. Although it's not completely healed, this method of using medicine to make music is very good. Mu Yan couldn't help but show an expression of appreciation. On her way from the Yanwu continent to the Xiuzhen continent, she had encountered very few musicians. Occasionally, she would meet one, but they were like Yi Shaoqin, the assistant pipa player in the three-courtyard tournament, people who were eager for quick success. They only used musical instruments and performance as a means to achieve fame and power. In their hearts, they don't have the slightest bit of love for music or the instrument in their hands. And this kind of character would be directly reflected in the music that was performed. Up until now, only the billowing music of the ocean contains such sincere emotions. She really loves the harp and treasures the lonely solitude of snow in her hands. That's why she can perfectly integrate her emotions, spiritual power, and music, and truly reach the level of a musician. It's a pity that such a noble musician was born in a filthy place like Mulu Pavilion. Ever since she was young, she had been brainwashed to discard her humanity and prioritize the interests of Mulu Pavilion. If this goes on, she doesn't know how long the clarity of her music can last. Under Yuan Lan's treatment, Chu Guangquan slowly opens his eyes. Ye Yun and the others call out in delight, "Elder Chu, how are you?" Who would have thought that Chu Guangquan would suddenly push them aside, his red eyes staring at Mu Yan, then looking at the Tian Mo Qin in her hands. "You, what kind of musician skill did you just use? What's that qin in your hands?" Leng Yuma impatiently says, "What kind of skill and zither is none of your business." No. How could it have nothing to do with me? Chu Guangquan staggers up from the ground. "That's the lost unique skill of my Mulu Pavilion." Why can you use it? Where on earth did you learn these musician skills? And this qin, I now have reason to suspect that this qin is the other lost artifact of my Mulu Pavilion, the cry of the 9 heavens crane. Yes, and the moves you used to resist the black fog of the unclean abyss. I thought they were familiar at the time, but I didn't think that they were the lost skills of my Mulu Pavilion for hundreds of years. Ye Yun and the others stare blankly at first, then widen their eyes in disbelief. "Elder Chu, is what you said true? Is that zither really the lost divine artifact of our cleansing joy pavilion, the cry of the 9 heavens? I've also heard that our cleansing joy pavilion used to have a powerful musician inheritance. Our strength was 100 or even 1,000 times stronger than it is now. Could it be that there really is a lost supreme art? But this is clearly my Mulu Pavilion's unique skill. How did it fall into the hands of this Jun Mayan?" "Saintess." Ye Yun grabbed Hong Lan's hand and said excitedly, "That's great." Cry of the 9 heavens crane had been lost for more than 10 years. It was the greatest regret of the previous generation's saintess when she died. Over the years, as long as a powerful zither appears, you will send someone to the Saint Lady Temple for inspection, just to confirm whether it is the cry of the ninth heaven crane. Now that we have found the real cry of the ninth heaven crane, you can also comfort the spirit of the former saintess in heaven. At first, there was some doubt on Yuan Shilan's face. When he heard Ye Yun's words, his heart shook, and his eyes couldn't help but ripple. The Cleansing Joy Pavilion's divine artifact was supposed to have two. One was the harp, solitary ice and snow, in the hands of Sea Dragon. Chapter 28:17. The other one was an inconspicuous zither called the Cry of the Ninth Heaven Crane. Before Bailon matured, no one in Cleansing Joy Pavilion could control the solitary serenity of ice and snow. That was why solitary ice and snow had always been shelved. The other one was an inconspicuous zither called the Cry of the Ninth Heaven Crane. Before Bailon matured, no one in Cleansing Joy Pavilion could control the solitary serenity of ice and snow. That was why solitary ice and snow had always been shelved. And the Holy Maiden had always used the Cry of the Ninth Heaven. The previous generation's saintess, who was also Bailan's mother, Bai Wei, was no exception. More than 10 years ago, a group of mysterious people appeared in Cleansing Joy Pavilion. They asked Cleansing Joy Pavilion to help them hunt down a few fugitives. At that time, Ban Lan was still young and didn't know the identity of those mysterious people. She only knew that they were very powerful. They were so powerful that the former Holy Maiden, who was already at the peak of the tribulation passing stage, and who was also Bailan's mother, couldn't resist them at all. After being intimidated, Ma Shiwei had no choice but to bring along her Cry of the Ninth Heaven Crane and lead a large group of Mu Lu Pavilion's elites to search for it. Who knew that in the end, this group of elites would be completely annihilated, and not even their bones were left behind. Only Shi Wei and Great Elder Xianyuan dragged their heavily injured bodies back, but Cleansing Lu Pavilion's divine weapon, Cry of the Nine Heavens Crane, was lost by her. Not long after returning to Cleansing Joy Pavilion, Ma Yinwei passed away due to her heavy injuries. Before she died, she was filled with guilt. She felt that she was the one who caused the deaths of the elites of the Mu Lu Pavilion. She was also the one who lost the Cry of the Ninth Heaven Crane, causing the Mu Lu Pavilion to lose the divine artifact. During those years, the status of the Saintess Temple of Cleansing Lu Pavilion was in jeopardy. It wasn't until Hong Lan matured and was able to play the solitary snow and ice that the situation was completely reversed. But in Hong Lan's heart, the crane's cry of the ninth heaven had always been on her mind, because that was her mother's final wish before she died. Hong Lan walked towards Mu Yen and said in a low voice, "Miss June, can you let me take your zither back to examine it for a few days? I guarantee that as long as this zither is not my Mu Lu Pavilion's divine weapon, it will be returned to you in 3 days. Are you sick?" Leng Yuma said snappily, "This zither is my junior sister's contracted weapon. If it is casually given to you, if it is slightly damaged, her own divine soul will suffer a backlash. If it were you, would you be willing to hand it over for other people to study?" Ling Yusheng also said coldly, "I want you to let us study your zither for 3 days. Are you willing?" "Are you kidding me?" Before Ban Jinlan could reply, Chu Guangquan and Ye Yun had already objected vehemently. "The solitary ice and snow is our Cleansing Joy Pavilion's most precious treasure. Apart from the saintess, it cannot be in the hands of anyone else." Hong Lan also frowned. The contract between her and the solitary star of ice and snow was no ordinary soul imprint. If she handed over icy snow solitary, and someone purposely tried to erase her imprint, she would suffer a strong backlash. "Miss June, solitary ice and snow is too important to me, I can't hand it over to you. But apart from the solitary serenity of ice and snow, I can accept anything you want as a guarantee. Furthermore, I guarantee in the name of the Saintess of Mu Lu Pavilion that as long as you don't steal the divine artifact of Mu Lu Pavilion, this zither will be returned to you." "How can returning the zither be enough?" Chu Guangquan said anxiously. "There's also the lost ultimate art of my Cleansing Lu Pavilion. And our sacred stone. Saintess, these are very important to our cleansing joy pavilion. You mustn't let them take them away. Chapter 28:18. Mu Yan looks at Yuan Shilan with a smile that isn't a smile. Do you think the conditions you proposed are very fair? Hu Jinlan's face immediately turned red. He subconsciously glanced at Luo Yunxiao. Of course, she knew that the deal she proposed was too biased. He wasn't willing to hand over the solitary serenity of the ice and snow, but he insisted that Mayan hand over her personal instrument. But Cry of the Ninth Heaven Crane was too important to her. The cleansing Le Pavilion was a responsibility that she could not abandon. He took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. Regardless of whether my conditions are fair or not, this is your only chance to prove your innocence. Or, does the Xiaoyao school really want to be enemies with the Cleansing Joy Pavilion? Chu Guangquan sneered, don't be so shameless. Since you've entered my northern continent, you'd better listen to me if you want to live. Even though Chu Guangquan had just been beaten by Mayan until he was looking for his teeth all over the floor. However, he was still incomparably arrogant and showed no signs of fear. This was because they were in the northern continent, within the boundaries of the Cleansing Joy Pavilion. This arrogant and despotic attitude completely angered Len Yuma and the others. Damn it, don't be so shameless. This is what I want to say. You want to steal my junior sister's things? Fine. Let's see if the carefree sect is afraid of you or not. In an instant, spiritual energy surged, and the atmosphere was tense. They were just 5 nascent soul cultivators. However, the immense pressure that was instantly released caused the expressions of everyone in Cleansing Delight Pavilion, including Elder Chu and the 5 saintesses, to change. They had always thought that Jun Mayan was the only strong one among the Xiaoyao 7. Jun Mayan was the only one who could beat Elder Chu, who was in the leaving body stage, with her nascent soul cultivation. But at this moment, he discovered that other than Jun Mayan, the other 4 were also so strong that it made his scalp go numb. Judging from the pressure of their auras, it seemed that each of the 4 of them could beat up Chu Guangquan. Chu Guangquan's face alternated between green and white as he hurriedly looked at Bailan. Saintess! Why don't you make a move? He shouted, everything is for Mu Le Pavilion. There was a hint of struggle and shame in Hong Lan's eyes. Her gaze sweeps over to Luo Yunxiao who hasn't spoken all this time, and she finally clenches her teeth. Jun Mayan, I'll give you one last chance. Don't force me to activate the myriad torrent formation. As she spoke, she had already activated her ice-snow solitude. His fingers plucked the strings of the zither, and the melody was ethereal and pleasant to listen to. As the zither was played, countless rays of light shot out from the zither and spread in all directions. It was as if he was trying to pull something between heaven and earth. Mayan sneers. The Tian Mo Qin spins a few circles in the air, and steadily falls in front of her. Did he really think that she was afraid of this stupid array? However, before she could speak, she heard a gentle and magnetic man's voice ring out. There's no need to give me another chance. Luo Yunxiao looked at Hong Lan, then slowly turned to the people of the Mu Le Pavilion and said, now, it's not the Mu Le Pavilion that wants to cause trouble for the Xiaoyao sect, it's the Xiaoyao sect that doesn't want to let this go. What? Hong Lan was shocked and pained. However, Luo Yunxiao did not even look at her as she raised her hand and threw out an array disc. The formation plate hovered in the air and began to spin rapidly. In a split second, strands of silver energy flew out from the formation plate and shot out in all directions. In the next moment, Hong Lan's eyes widened in shock, and she could no longer continue playing the guqin. How could this be? Saintess? What are you doing? Quickly activate the array. Chapter 28:19. Hong Lan looks at Luo Yunxiao in disbelief. What did you do? Why was her connection with the Wantu Great Array cut off? Ye Yun and the others also realize something and become nervous. The Wantu Great Array is another treasure of our Mu Le Pavilion. What did you do, Yun Xiao Gongzi? Don't tell me you want to take our formation for yourself. How can everyone in the Xiaoyao school be so shameless? Jun Mayan stole our zither and learned our secret arts. Yun Xiao Gongzi, you robbed our holy stone, and now you still want it. Slap. A heavy slap lands on Ye Shuang's face. She falls to the ground and can't get up for a long time. Then, slap slap slap. The continuous applause caused everyone in Cleansing Joy Pavilion to fall to the ground, except for Yuan Sherlan. Ye Yun, Ye Shuang, Ye Feng, Ye Shui, Ye Yu, and Dong Ling are fine. Being slapped in the air, their cheeks are swollen and they don't suffer any real injury. But Chu Guangquan and his subordinates, who scolded them the most viciously, have their bones broken. Some scream like pigs being slaughtered, and some marry each other. Hong Lan stares at Luo Yunxiao in disbelief. What are you doing? She doesn't even think about it. Luo Yunxiao, who has always been gentle and elegant, is actually so ruthless. Luo Yunxiao says lightly, didn't you accuse our Xiaoyao school of robbing your things? Since we've been accused, if we don't prove it, won't we suffer a loss? Pfft. Mayan and the others can't help but laugh. I didn't know that Junior Master is so two-faced. Ahem, isn't it the good tradition of our Xiaoyao school to return a tooth for a tooth and an eye for an eye? Luo Yunxiao has always been indifferent. On the surface, he is gentle and elegant, but in fact, he has an indescribable sense of alienation from everything in the world. But these few times, in order to protect them, he attacks again and again, showing his anger and emotions. This makes the people of the Xiaoyao school feel that their junior master, who is like an immortal from the ninth heaven, seems to be a lot closer to them. The atmosphere in the Xiaoyao school is cheerful. The people of Cleansing Joy Pavilion were ashamed and furious at the same time. With tears in her eyes, Dong Ling fiercely glared at Luo Yunxiao and roared hysterically, the saintess has fallen in love with you. For you, she even tolerated your spirit beast and the people of the Xiaoyao sect. How can you be so heartless and let her down? Luo Yunxiao subconsciously glances at Mayan. Seeing her gaze sweep back and forth between Yuan Sherlan and him, he couldn't help but feel a pang in his heart. But he quickly covered it up. His appearance was elegant beyond compare, but his expression was as indifferent as smoke. I've never fallen in love, so how can I be heartless? These short words were like a sharp blade that ruthlessly pierced through Military Orchid's heart. Her face was pale from the pain, and she was on the verge of collapsing. The thing that she was most unable to accept was that Luo Yunxiao didn't even look down on her, nor did she feel disgusted or detest. She purely didn't take her seriously in the slightest. Luo Yunxiao, you're too much. Ye Yun screamed. Her fingers fiercely plucked on the pipa, we just want to take back Cleansing Joy Pavilion's things. Is that wrong? Luo Yunxiao sneered. A frog at the bottom of a well, short-sighted. Do you really think that everyone in the world covets your Cleansing Joy Pavilion's things? As he spoke, he threw the holy stone in front of Military Orchid. Chapter 28-20. I've already explained the origin and backlash of the Nightmare Stone. If you say that it belongs to your Cleansing Joy Pavilion, then so be it. I hope you won't regret it when the entire Horton tribe suffers a backlash in the future. Are you cursing us? Enough. Hong Lan's face was pale. She picked up the Nightmare Stone and shouted, let's go. Saintess. How can we just leave like this? Cry of the Nine Heavens Crane and our Cleansing Le Pavilion's ultimate technique. Yuan Sherlan raised his voice and roared, I said go. Do you want to disobey my orders? Or do you think you haven't embarrassed yourselves enough today? As she spoke, she tightly gripped the Nightmare Stone in her hand. Without sparing Luo Yunxiao another glance, he soared into the sky. The wind whistled past her cheeks, and a tear fell from the corner of her eye, dissipating in the air. Ye Yun took out a flying boat and carried the injured people of Cleansing Le Pavilion onto it. Before leaving, she fiercely glares at Mu Yan and Luo Yunxiao before turning to leave. Seeing that they had flown away, Lin Yuma frowned and said, "Junior Martial Uncle, you're letting them go just like that?" It didn't conform to the Xiaoyao sect's principle of, if people don't offend us, we won't offend them. If people offend us, we'll cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. Luo Yunxiao remained silent. On the contrary, Mu Yan slowly says, Mulu Pavilion has indeed created many innocent blasphemers, but it has also cured many patients over the years. Furthermore, there's one more thing that Mayan didn't say. The entire Horton tribe, and even the entire northern continent, had to offer sacrifices to the Nightmare Stone every year to receive its power. Those ordinary cultivators who had only strengthened their physical bodies were fine. However, it was different for those gods givers who had improved their cultivation and were given special abilities. They had to participate in the sacrificial ceremony every year to receive the power bestowed by the Nightmare Stone. Once it stopped, these people's bodily functions would begin to deteriorate and their spiritual power would dry up. In the end, his symptoms were not much different from those of a blasphemer. It was like an addiction that could not be broken. Consuming too much would turn one into a monster. Consuming too little would also turn one into a monster. From the moment they started using the pyrolite stones, they had already entered a vicious circle. Moreover, with the passage of time, generation after generation, all gods bestowers and even ordinary cultivators would become more and more reliant on the Nightmare Stones until they were beyond redemption. Mayan looks at Junior Martial Uncle. Chiwen said that you need that Nightmare Stone. Is it okay to give it to Mulu Pavilion like this? Luo Yunxiao turned to look at her and moved his lips. Just when Mu Yan thinks that he is going to answer, she suddenly hears him say coldly, Jun Mayan, how many times have you let yourself fall into danger? The corner of Mayan's mouth twitches. Cough, Junior Martial Uncle, are you still angry? She really wanted to explain that the god-punishing shaman could not hurt her. However, little Martial Uncle's expression was too terrifying. She couldn't explain it at all. Ayaya, how could Master bear to be angry with you, Mei Yen Yen? Even if the Master was really angry, as long as you pounced on him and gave him a kiss, the Master would already be howling. Master, spare me. Chiwen won't dare to speak nonsense anymore. Luo Yunxiao stared coldly at Chiwen, who was in her hand. Her expression was cold and stern, and she no longer had her usual indulgence. Who told you to act on your own and steal something from Mulu Pavilion? Chiwen said in an aggrieved tone, but that wasn't an ordinary thing. It was the Nightmare Stone that Master wanted. Boo hoo hoo, Master, I know I was wrong. In the future, I won't dare to act on my own. Please don't, Chiwen, okay? Chapter 28-21. Mei Yen Yen, help me put in a few good words. Chiwen will become a wild child without a master. The corner of Mu Yan's mouth twitches. What fucking wild child? Chiwen, do you know that you're a few hundred years old magical beast? And you're a fucking womanizer. Luo Yunxiao's face darkens. After leaving the northern continent, go back to the Xingyuan dock by yourself. Master. The joking expression on Chi Wen's face disappeared at this moment and was replaced by panic. Master, are you joking? I really know that I was wrong. I shouldn't have gone to steal the insect stone without telling you. I shouldn't have implicated Mei Yen Yen and the others. In the future, I really won't dare to do it again. Master, you can punish me however you want, just don't drive me away. When I came out of the Xingyuan dock, I swore that I would follow you forever. Mu Yan, quickly help me persuade Master, okay? Chiwen clings to Mu Yan's clothes, not even calling her Mei Yen Yen, that she usually likes to talk about. Her eyes are filled with uncontrollable anxiety, panic, and pleading. Mu Yan also feels that Chiwen is too bold. If she lets it continue to cause trouble, sooner or later, it will bring disaster to little Martial Uncle. But wouldn't it be too harsh to drive Chiwen away directly? She moves her lips, but in the end, she doesn't say anything. Little Martial Uncle has always been a person who is cold on the outside but warm on the inside. He will never act impulsively because of impulsiveness. There must be a reason for letting Chi-Wen leave. You help me persuade Master, okay? I don't want to go. I don't want to leave Master. Seeing that Mu Yen doesn't reply, Chi-Wen tugs at Ling Yuma and Ling Yusheng's clothes. Her voice becomes more and more shrill and anxious, even carrying a hint of sobbing. Ling Yusheng can't bear it. Little martial uncle, Chi-Wen knows he was wrong, can you give him another chance? Ling Yuma also says, yes, if you're angry, just punish him severely. He has been following you, if you drive him away, you might not be used to it. Chi-Wen looks up at Luo Yunxiao, only hoping that he can take back his order. Ling Yuma nudges Mu Yen with her elbow. If one were to talk about pleading for leniency, then junior sister would definitely be the most useful. Mu Yen is silent for a moment, then coughs lightly. Chi cannot escape punishment, but the death penalty can still be spared. Moreover, I still need its help with something. Young martial uncle, why don't you make an exception and let it redeem itself for a period of time? Luo Yunxiao snapped, what can it help you with? In order to plead for it, you spared no effort. Mayan smiles brightly, if Chi-Wen can really help me, would junior martial uncle be willing to spare his dog life? Luo Yunxiao saw that she rarely showed such a crafty look in front of her, and her brows couldn't help but soften a bit. But he said, I'm just asking it to return to Xingyuan dock. Why do I want its life? Wow! Master, if Chi-Wen leaves you, doesn't that mean you want to kill Chi-Wen? Chi-Wen hugs Mayan and cries, Mei Yen, I knew you were the best. Tell me, do you want me to be a cow or a horse for you? As long as Master doesn't drive me away, I'm willing to do anything. Mu Yen sees Luo Yunxiao crossing his arms over his chest, looking like he wants to see how Chi-Wen will help him. She can't help but smile. Does junior martial uncle really think that I'm giving him a perfunctory reason? She beckons to Wen Huanglang and the villagers of Yuanwu village. Chapter 28-22. Hundreds of people immediately lined up neatly and eagerly ran over. Madam Enchantress, what can I do for you? Madam Enchantress, if there's anything you need us to do, just tell us. In times of crisis, these people habitually called Mayan, Madam Immortal. Now that they've come back to their senses, they remembered that Chi-Wen disliked Madam Immortal, so they changed it to Madam Enchantress. Mayan said, I promise to completely expel the god-killing shaman from your body. It might be very painful during this period, are you willing to accept it? Willing. Madam Enchantress is willing to save us, what's a bit of suffering? That's right, let alone suffering, even if you ask me to climb a mountain of swords or plunge into a pot of boiling oil, I won't even frown. Mayan nodded and grabbed something from the Tian Mo Chin space. In a split second, a huge shadow shrouded the villagers of Yuanwu village. Huh? What's this? Stupid, can't you see it? It's a tree. I know it's a tree, but what kind of tree is it? The villagers of Yuanwu village kept circling around the tree that Mayan had just taken out. Even the people of the Xiaoyao school were curious and gathered around. Only Luo Yunxiao, who was standing on the periphery, had her pupils shrink after seeing the tree. Chu Moli, who had always been gentle and quiet, spoke up at this time, is this tree related to the treatment of the god-killing shaman? Mayan shook her head, then nodded. In fact, I was looking for this tree in order to treat eldest brother's illness. Huh? Eldest brother's illness is related to this tree. What kind of tree is this? Mayan's eyes were focused on the tall and lush tree, and she slowly said, when eldest brother was unconscious that day, I couldn't tell what kind of illness he had. I only knew that in his heart vein, there was a kind of energy that seemed like poison but wasn't, like evil but wasn't. So, I could only conclude that eldest brother was poisoned. Eldest brother's illness only broke out when he entered the snow demon forest, so there must be something in the forest that caused him to be poisoned. In the end, I found this tree. Ordinary people might not be able to find the difference between this tree and ordinary spirit plants. However, she, who had used all plants' resonating resonance, could clearly feel that the energy contained in the tree and the poison in eldest senior brother's body complemented each other. At the time, I didn't know what this poison was. But now, everything is clear. That was the god-slaying shaman. At the same time, it was also the poison that was slowly deposited in the cultivator's body after being used by the nightmare stone. And to completely expel the god-slaying witch from the bodies of the villagers of Yuanwu village, relying on the skills of a Shin musician is not enough. It was necessary to use the mutually reinforcing and restraining things contained in the tree as a guide to fully exert the effect of the art of magic yellow. This is also the reason why Mayan confidently told the people of Mulu Pavilion that she can cure the villagers of Yuanwu village. She was just a little confused. Whether it was the god-punishing witch or the poison of the nightmare stone, they would not accumulate in a cultivator's body in a short period of time. It was just like how Ling Yuma and the others had stayed in the unclean abyss for 2 days and did not need to purposely get rid of the poison. But eldest senior brother had clearly just entered the northern continent. How could there be so much god-killing witch poison in his body? So strong. Even more so than the villagers of Yuanwu village who had lived in the Horton tribe all their lives. Mayan composed herself and threw her doubts to the back of her mind. The sound of the zither slowly rang out, and countless rays of light enveloped the tree. Chapter 28-23. After an hour, the originally green leaves and brown branches began to be plated with a layer of silver brilliance. Then, the whole tree began to tremble violently. Leaves flew towards the villagers of Yuanwu village. Eat these leaves. At Mu Yan's command, the villagers didn't hesitate and directly put the leaves into their mouths. The moment the leaves entered their stomachs, a scorching stream of air sprang up from their stomachs and instantly flowed through their whole body. Ah, so hot, so painful, the skin of the villagers suddenly turned red, as if they were on fire. Bean-sized beads of sweat came out from their foreheads. Along with the beads of sweat, there were also wisps of black energy lines. However, these energy strands seemed to be reluctant to leave their bodies. From time to time, they would drill in and out of their skin, unwilling to leave. Mu Yan's hand kept playing and said loudly, "Qi Wen, didn't you want to atone for your crimes? Now is your chance." "Ah." Mu Yan said, "Go and swallow all the devil energy overflowing from their bodies." "What?" Qi Wen blinked. "Swallow? Swallow the devil energy? It's a magical beast, it's not impossible." Devil energy was also a great tonic for it. But the problem was that the devil energy coming out from other people's bodies. It was just like other people's feces, very smelly and disgusting, okay? Now, not only did it have to eat other people's feces, but it also had to eat hundreds of people's feces. How could Qi Wen bear this? "You don't accept." Mu Yan hooked up her lips and looked at Luo Yunxiao, "Young martial uncle, I take back my plea, you take this guy, I'll eat, okay?" Qi Wen was scared out of her wits. Without hesitation, she rushed over and inhaled the devil energy coming out from Wen Huanglang's body. Sure enough, the devil energy that was going in and out of Wen Huanglang's body, refusing to leave, was completely swallowed by Qi Wen in a split second. An hour later. Burpug, Qi Wen pressed her abdomen with her claws, lying on the ground like a pile of mud, unable to get up for a long time. I can't eat anymore. I don't want to swallow devil energy in this life. Boo-hoo, it's too scary." Mu Yan looks at its mud-like appearance and can't help but burst out laughing. "Little martial uncle, I believe that from today onwards, Qi Wen will definitely not dare to make any more mistakes." Qi Wen nodded with tears in her eyes. Regardless of whether it was his master or Mei Yan, they were both too terrifying. It didn't want to experience this kind of punishment a second time. Mu Yan looked at Luo Yunxiao and said with a smile, "So, young martial uncle, seeing that it's already in such a miserable state, please spare it this time." Luo Yunxiao was silent for a moment before nodding. All right. But I have one condition. What condition? Luo Yunxiao points to the tree that Mu Yan has just taken out of the Tian Mo Qin's space, and says in a deep voice, I want the trunk of this tree. Mayan blinks, just this. Luo Yunxiao nodded. She was speechless and wanted to roll her eyes. Youngest martial uncle, I only took this tree to treat eldest martial brother's illness. Actually, a few branches were enough. You can have them all if you want. At that time, she moved the whole tree here purely because she found it troublesome. Moreover, there was no way to estimate how serious eldest martial brother's poisoning condition was. Luo Yunxiao looked at her deeply. Do you know the origin of this tree? 1,000 years ago. Without waiting for him to finish speaking, Mayan waved her hand and put the tree into her qiankuan bag, stuffing it into Luo Yunxiao's hand. Chapter 28-24. Mu Yan only left a huge branch for herself. From her experience in treating the villagers of Yuanwu village, this big branch is enough to cure the entire Horton tribe. Luo Yunxiao holds the qiankuan bag in a daze. Don't you want to know the origin of this tree? Hee, little junior sister is afraid that the value of this tree is too high, and you can't bear to part with it. It's better not to know. There's no other way, who told little junior sister to always be so poor. She can't wait to convert all the treasures on her into Jingshi. Mu Yan righteously says, am I that kind of person who likes Jingshi? Little martial uncle is one of us, the things we give to little martial uncle, value. Luo Yunxiao takes out a qiankuan bag and empties it. Clatter, countless dazzling obsidian crystals roll down, piling up into a small hill. This time, the hill is more than 3 times bigger than the one Luo Yunxiao gave them last time. Mu Yan's eyes stare straight, her impassioned words of pretense of generosity can no longer go on. Leng Yuma directly pounces on it, damn it. Obsidian crystals, these are all obsidian crystals. I've never seen them in my entire life. Luo Yunxiao looks at their appearance when they see the Jingshi, a faint smile appearing in her eyes. Her cold and indifferent eyes seem to be stained with a trace of warmth. After packing up everything, Mu Yan and the others prepare to set off to find Yun Ruhan and Luo Yu. According to Wen Huanglang, the old woman who can use the red compass should be a member of the Yun family. The Yun family is also a great family in the northern continent of Ziyunjia, and does not belong to Mulu Pavilion. However, their relationship with Mulu Pavilion has always been close, and they have many marriages. Therefore, although the old woman is a member of the Yun family, she could command the guards of Mulu Pavilion at that time. Little martial uncle, you want to travel with us? Seeing Luo Yunxiao nod, Mu Yan and the others are both surprised and happy. They have long been accustomed to little martial uncle appearing and disappearing like a ghost, coming and going without stopping. They thought that this time, he would be like before, solving their crisis and then leaving. They didn't expect that this time, little martial uncle would act together with them. Little martial uncle is worried that we offended Mulu Pavilion and will suffer retaliation, right? Hee, maybe little martial uncle is also worried about Shao Qi and eldest senior brother. Luo Yunxiao allowed them to laugh and tease her, but she remained silent. If they went overboard, he would punish them directly. They were tormented to the point of hovering between life and death and peeling off a layer of skin. They no longer dared to speak carelessly. Just like that, the group quickly arrived at the Yun family's territory. In the northern land of the Purple Cloud world, the place with the most human traffic was usually called the market. In the center of the Yun family, there was a Yunyi bazaar similar to the Wanjin bazaar. Just as they were about to enter Cloudfield Bazaar, Luo Yunxiao's expression suddenly changed, and she stopped in her tracks. Mu Yan and the others turned to look. A black talisman floated out from his body, floated in midair, and then slowly burned. Within the lingering black fog, a blurry figure was faintly discernible. Then, a soft and pleasant voice with a sobbing tone sounded. Shao, your brother Yuan Yi is in trouble, come back quickly. Come back and save him. Only you can save him. Luo Yunxiao's thin lips moved, as if he wanted to say something. Then, another low voice sounded impatiently, "Why are you wasting words with him? Don't use the Big Dipper technique and bring him back." Can't wait. Chapter 28-25. Mu Yan was standing next to Luo Yunxiao. She watched as the blood on his face and the warmth in his eyes faded, turning into a desolate heart. She subconsciously called out, "Young martial uncle." She stretched out her hand as if she wanted to grab something. However, the black smoke from the burning talisman suddenly gushed out and wrapped around Luo Yunxiao. "Young martial uncle!" Mu Yan shouted and rushed over. However, she only managed to grab a corner of Luo Yunxiao's clothes. He could only watch helplessly as he disappeared right in front of his eyes. Lu Pavilion. The Saintess has returned. With a series of shouts, the middle door of the Saintess Hall opened and a group of people filed in. Elder Xian Yuan hurried forward and said anxiously, "The holy stone has been found." Before he could finish his words, he found that something was wrong. He saw that the 5 saintesses' hair were all disheveled and their cheeks were swollen. Because they were women, Luo Yunxiao did not hit them hard. However, the slap he sent out in midair contained immortal energy. Mu Yinglan tried her best but could not make the swelling go away immediately. She could only wait for them to slowly heal. As for Chu Guangquan and the others, they were even worse off. Several of the bones in their bodies were broken, and every one of them was enough to make them unable to walk and suffer so much pain that they wanted to die. The pain of these broken bones could not be healed by musician skills, so they could only endure it. And Chu Guangquan was the most miserable. One of his broken bones was his spine. At this time, he was lying on the bed with grief and indignation, fear and despair. Other people's bones could grow back, but he was likely to be paralyzed in bed for the rest of his life. "Who is it? Who hurt you?" Xian Yuan said angrily, "Is the bastard who stole the holy stone really so powerful? Did you get the holy stone back?" Mu Yinglan bit her lip and stretched out her hand. A reddish-brown stone was exposed and slowly flew in the direction of the praying god tower. Seeing that the holy stone had returned, Xian Yuan breathed a sigh of relief. "What happened? Who hurt Elder Chu like this?" "Xiaoyao School. It's all their fault." Chu Guangquan roared and struggled to get up, but he found that he couldn't feel anything from his neck down. He couldn't move at all. He was filled with grief, indignation, and despair. He couldn't help but shout, "Saintess, great elder, you must avenge me." Ye Yun took a step forward. Covering his swollen cheek with his sleeve, he recounted what had happened outside the unclean abyss today. The more Grand Elder Xian Yuan listened, the more frightened he became, his face turning green and white. When he hears that the zither that Jun Mayan is using is very likely the lost artifact of Mu Lu Pavilion, the cry of the 9th heaven crane, his eyes flash. But it was quickly covered by excitement. Is the musician's skill that Jun Mayan displayed really that powerful? Absolutely. Ye Yun nodded solemnly. Ye Shuang and the others were unwilling, but they had to admit it. Whether it's fighting or healing, her musician skills are beyond imagination. Ye Shuang also described what had happened in the clear night hall. "I always feel that the musician skills displayed by this Jun Mayan are very similar to our Mu Lu pavilions." Ye Yun said hesitantly, "It's even more powerful than the musician skills inherited from our Mu Lu pavilion." Chu Guangquan said loudly, "I already said that it's the lost secret skill of our Mu Lu pavilion. Great Elder, as long as we take back these secret skills, the strength of our Mu Lu pavilion will not be the same as before." Chapter 28-26. Xian Yuan paced back and forth, while the look in his eyes constantly changed. Sometimes excited, sometimes greedy, and sometimes nervous. Regarding the lost secret art of Clean Lu Pavilion, Chu Guangquan and the others did not know much about it. Xian Yuan was the only one in the entire Clean Lu Pavilion who knew the truth. Clean Lo Pavilion was said to be unrivaled in the musician path for thousands of years. But in fact, it was only 1,000 years ago that they really rose to become a world-famous music doctor. This was all because 1,000 years ago, when the ancestor of Clean Lo Pavilion went to the Woodfern Sea to gain experience, he accidentally picked up a broken cosmos bag. Inside this cosmos bag, there was a cry of the ninth heaven crane, an ice and snow solitude, a holy stone, and a mirage stone that had been mostly worn out. The mirage stones recorded in them were all incomparably mysterious musician skills. The ancestor of Clean Lo Pavilion was originally a musician. After seeing the images recorded in the mirage stone, he was shocked and immediately began to learn. Because of this cosmos bag, Clean Lo Pavilion gradually became a unique music doctor inheritance in the true cultivation continent. But unexpectedly, the damaged mirage stone, after persisting for a few years, turned into powder. Moreover, the musician's skills taught inside were too difficult, and it was impossible to master them all in a few years. Therefore, the ancestor of Clean Lo Pavilion could only watch the secret art slip away from his hands with heartache and unwillingness. In the images recorded in the mirage stone, there was a sentence. The images recorded in the mirage stone are only used to support the god musician sect's secret art. Do not be greedy for simplicity, using it as a reference, it will be difficult to achieve great things. What did this sentence mean? It meant that the secret art recorded in the mirage stone, which shocked Clean Lo Pavilion, was just an empty shell, used by others to assist in the cultivation of the real secret art. Even the empty shell was so powerful, not to mention the real secret art. Since then, Clean Lo Pavilion mobilized all of its forces to search the true cultivation continent. They hoped to find the real secret art of the god musician sect. However, the result was in vain. It was not until the ancestor of Clean Lo Pavilion discovered the magical use of the holy stone that he gradually gave up on this idea. But almost all the high-level members of Clean Lo Pavilion knew that their Clean Lo Pavilion had a secret art that was lost outside. If they could retrieve this lost art, then the Cleansing Joy Pavilion would be like adding wings to a tiger, and they would be invincible. Grand Elder Xian Yuan knew more than they did. At this time, he clearly realized that it was a unique skill of the god musicians. What that Jun Mayan grasps must be the godly musician's secret art that they've been searching for thousands of years. Great Elder Xian Yuan suddenly slaps the table, his face filled with righteous indignation and excitement. I don't know who this Jun Mu Yen is, but my Mu Lo Pavilion's ancestral secret technique cannot be allowed to fall into the hands of others. The Xiaoyao sect is going too far. They stole the holy stone of the Mu Lo Pavilion, let the blasphemer go, and now they've injured an elder of the Mu Lo Pavilion. They don't even respect the Mu Lo Pavilion. Everyone nodded in agreement. Elder Chu even had tears in his eyes as he said, Grand Elder, you must seek justice for us. You must help Cleansing Lo Pavilion recover their divine artifacts and ultimate arts. Xian Yuan heavily nods, then looks at Jin Lan. Saintess, I wonder where Jun Mayan is now. Jin Lan frowns, not answering for a long time. Only when Xian Yuan urges her, does she slowly say, Grand Elder, is what young Master Yun Shao said about the holy stone true? Are those blasphemers really innocent? Chapter 28-27. Xian Yuan stares blankly, then says with displeasure, Saintess, what do you mean by that? Don't tell me you believe in an outsider, but not in the ancestors of my Mu Lo Pavilion? Have you forgotten how much hardship my Mu Lo Pavilion had to pay to protect the people of the Horton tribe? Even your mother, Yuan Wei, sacrificed her life to protect this land. Are you questioning the inheritance and glory of my Mu Lo Pavilion for a man? Being scolded, Yuan Lan lowers her head, feeling ashamed in her heart. Great Elder, it's Yuan Lan's fault. Yuan Lan shouldn't have questioned the Mu Lo Pavilion that mother protected with her life. I will definitely take back the cry of the ninth heaven crane and the lost art. Saying so, she takes out the ice snow solitary, closes her eyes, and gently plucks the strings. Because the entire northern continent is shrouded in the 10,000 Torrents Great Array, and the 10,000 Torrents Great Array is connected to Yuan Lan's soul. Therefore, everything that happens in the 10,000 Torrents Great Array can be transmitted to her sea of consciousness. Yuan Lan opens her eyes, revealing a surprised and perplexed expression. They went to the Yun family's Wild Cloud Bazaar. Moreover, young Master Yun Xiao isn't among them. There's no trace of Luo Yunxiao's aura in the entire array. Hearing this, everyone is pleasantly surprised. The one they originally feared the most was the continent's #1 swordsman, young Master Yun Xiao. And just now, outside the unclean abyss, Luo Yunxiao also showed them what it means to have overwhelming strength. Whether it's the 10,000 Torrents Great Array or the advantage in numbers, they're all useless to him. He only needs to wave his hand, and they won't be able to resist. If Luo Yunxiao had always been by Mayan's side, it would be as difficult as ascending to heaven for them to obtain the zither and the lost art. But now, Luo Yunxiao is gone, only Yuan Lan's heart surges with unspeakable sorrow and sorrow. There's a little satisfaction in her chest that slowly dissipates, leaving only emptiness and loneliness. For the first time in her life, she's moved, and perhaps it's also the only time. Was it going to end in embarrassment and despair just like that? Yuan Lan closes her eyes, dissolving the heat in them. When she opens them again, there's only callousness and determination left. She looks at Great Elder Xian Yuan and says in a low voice, "The Wild Cloud Bazaar is within the Yun family's sphere of influence. This matter requires Great Elder." Before he could finish his words, a figure suddenly rushed in from outside. This person was wearing the deacon uniform of Mulu Pavilion, but she was clearly not from the Saint Lady Temple. As soon as he entered, he charged at Grand Elder Xianyuan. Great Elder, urgent news has come from the Yun family." The newcomer knelt down in front of Xianyuan, raised his hands high above his head, and handed over a red paper crane. Xianyuan frowned. He was very unhappy about being disturbed at this time. But Anaxia was still angry, and she took the paper crane. As soon as the paper crane entered his hand, it turned into an image. A hunchbacked old woman with a head full of white hair appeared above. Her eyes were slightly red, and the wrinkles on her face were slightly trembling from excitement. She said loudly, "First Elder, young Master Ji Feng has returned. He's still alive. Please come back and take a look." Xianyuan was stunned and only reacted after a long while. Who was the young Master Ji Feng that the old woman mentioned? He could not help but narrow his eyes, revealing a surprised expression. Young Master Ji Feng. Ye Yun pondered for a moment, also revealing a shocked expression. Could it be Yun Ji Feng, the original successor of the Yun family, Great Elder's grandson? But he isn't. Chapter 28. Ye Yun couldn't help but look at Ma Yanwei. The Yun family had a tradition of marrying Mulu Pavilion. Elder Xuanyuan's daughter, Xian Menglan, married Yun Zhaoxing, the head of the Yun family. Yun Jifeng was their son. So Ye Yun and the others certainly remembered the name Yun Jifeng. But at the same time, they also remembered that Yun Jifeng should have died more than 10 years ago. At that time, Ma Yanwei and Elder Xianyuan brought the elites of Mulu Pavilion to look for him. Yun Jifeng and his cousin Yun Heng also went with them. Who knew that they would never return? After that, the Yun family sent a lot of people to look for him, but they couldn't even find his corpse. Slowly, everyone forgot the existence of Yun Jifeng. Only his mother, who had been by his side all these years, refused to believe that her young master was dead, and kept searching for him in the northern continent. However, Xianyuan had witnessed his grandson's death with his own eyes. But he didn't have time to bring the corpse back, and was thrown off the cliff by the airwave. How could a dead person come back? So when Xianyuan heard the words, young Master Jifeng, he was stunned for a long time before he reacted. The old woman was talking about his grandson. Great Elder, what's going on? Ma Yanlan was also puzzled. I remember when you and mother came back, you said that everyone who went with you in that battle was annihilated. Only mother and you returned with serious injuries. There was also Yunheng who escaped. Because he was afraid, he didn't enter the battlefield. Xianyuan frowned. I'll go to the Yun family. He also wanted to know how his grandson, who he had watched die, had come back alive. If he was really alive, where did he go all these years? The people of the Xiaoyao school watched Luo Yunxiao disappear, dumbfounded. After a long time, they came back to their senses. Is little Uncle Master okay? Who the hell are those two people who are talking? Their tone is really disgusting. That's right. What right do they have to be so arrogant and bossy around young martial uncle? Mayan frowns. I don't know what they want Xiao Shishu to do by letting him go back. Young martial uncle wouldn't be injured again, right? She couldn't forget that time in the Starry School. Little Uncle Master suddenly disappeared, and when he came back, his back was badly mutilated. At that time, they also asked who hurt him, but they didn't get an answer. Bastard. If I find out who hurt little martial uncle, I'll definitely skin him alive and pull out his tendons. Leng Yuma recalled the scene back then and gritted her teeth in anger. But now, no matter how worried they were, there was nothing they could do. Just by looking at how that person was able to take Luo Yunxiao away with a talisman, one could tell how strong they were. If they wanted to contend against him now, it would be like an ant trying to shake a tree. Mu Yan took a deep breath. Junior martial uncle, even if we want to interfere, we can't. Right now, let's look for eldest senior brother and Xiao Qi. Everyone nodded. Mu Yan is about to speak when her complexion suddenly changes. He leaped into the air and grabbed at the air in the direction of the window. In the next moment, a figure was pulled out from behind the window lattice in a sorry state and fell to the ground with his neck in his hands. Wen Qingyuan. Mu Yan said slowly, you're quite courageous to actually dare to follow me. Wen Qingyuan's gaze was fixed on her. There was shock, astonishment, disbelief, and unconcealable fear in his eyes. He was in a daze for a long time before he murmured, you actually came out from the uncleansed abyss. Jun Shiyuan, what's your relationship with him? Chapter 28-29. Mu Yan sneers, the strength in her hands suddenly intensifying. Shouldn't I be the one asking you this? What is your relationship with Jun Shiyuan? Cough, cough, cough. When Qingyuan's throat is choked and he can't breathe. His handsome face instantly turns purple and distorted. He operates his dantian, wanting to mobilize his spiritual power to resist and send a signal to summon his subordinates to rescue him. However, he soon discovers something to his horror. Mu Yan's hand clutching his throat seems to be choking all the meridians in his body. Don't even mention resisting, he can't even use a trace of spiritual power. This time, when Qingyuan is really scared. Miss June, calm down, cough, cough, I don't have any bad intentions. He pulls out a smile, Mr. Jun Shiyuan is my benefactor. When I see Miss June, I feel cordial. Absolutely, cough, absolutely no bad intentions. Mu Yan says unhurriedly, Jun Shiyuan is your benefactor? It's absolutely true. Wen Qingyuan nodded furiously. My saber technique was improved by Mr. Jun. Mu Yan looks at him faintly for a moment, then curls up her lips and lets go. Cough, cough, cough. Air rushes into his throat, causing Wen Qingyuan to cough violently. After a long while, he gets up from the ground and shows a kind and happy smile to Mu Yan. Miss June, may I ask if you are Mr. Jun's daughter? Mu Yan looks at him with a smile that isn't a smile for a long time. Wen Qingyuan's scalp tingles as he slowly nods. Wen Qingyuan's pupils violently contract, then he immediately bursts into a brilliant smile. Great, great. When Mr. Jun left with Miss June, it was unknown whether they were alive or dead. I thought that you had met with an accident. I didn't expect that Miss June was still alive, and so outstanding. I can see Mr. Jun's successor in my lifetime. Even if I die, I can die without regret. As he says this, the rims of his eyes redden. That sincere look, if Mu Yan hadn't met Wen Huanglang first, she might have believed it. However, it seems that Wen Qingyuan still doesn't know that the villagers of Yuanwu village and Wen Huanglang have also come out of the unpurified abyss. Mayan chuckles, if it wasn't for Sir Wen's sincere attitude right now, I would have thought that Sir Wen wanted me dead, which is why he let me enter the unclean abyss. How could that be? Wen Qingyuan said anxiously, Miss June, you must not misunderstand me. I only instructed my subordinates to investigate the whereabouts of the unfettered seven. When they found out that they had been sent into the unclean abyss, they hurriedly sent a message to you. I didn't know anything about this, and I was very worried about it. Then, he looked at Leng Yuma and the others. Luckily, Miss June, you are very capable. You actually managed to save your fellow disciples from the uncleansed abyss. When Wen Qingyuan said this, his eyes were filled with worship and awe. However, from his current behavior, one could not see the slightest bit of malice. After I was separated from Mr. June. I haven't seen him since then. Miss June, how is Mr. June doing now? Let's not talk about my father first. Mu Yan interrupted him and said, there is something I need Mr. Wen's help with. When Qingyuan stared blankly, then immediately put on a smile, Miss June, you are Mr. June's daughter, so you are my benefactor. If you have any instructions, as long as I can do it, I will not dare to neglect it. Chapter 28:30. Mu Yan, my eldest senior brother and seventh junior brother were taken away by the Yun family. Can I trouble the listening pavilion to investigate their whereabouts for me? When Qingyuan nodded without hesitation, Miss June and the rest of the Xiaoyao sect, please wait in the listening pavilion. I promise I will give you the news in an hour at most. The listening pavilion was an intelligence agency that covered the entire Purple Cloud realm. There was also a branch of the listening pavilion in the Yun family's Wild Cloud Bazaar. Mu Yan and the others sat in a luxurious and elegant pavilion. From time to time, maids would serve exquisite snacks with rich spiritual energy. After the maids left, Leng Yuma finally couldn't help but ask, Junior sister, do you really believe? But before she could finish, she was interrupted by Chu Moli and Mu Yan's deep eyes. Chu Moli raised his teacup and took a sip. Then, he said with a light smile, this listening sound pavilion's masked dew is pretty good. You can't even taste it outside. Mu Yan also smiled and put a pastry in her mouth, the tea is too bitter. I think this snack tastes good. Leng Yumo reacted and didn't say anything else. She also laughed and ate. About an hour later, when Qingyuan pushed the door open and hurried in. Miss June, he bowed deeply to Mu Yan, I didn't disappoint you. I found the whereabouts of young Master Yun and young Master Lan. The five of them immediately stood up. When Qingyuan's expression was complicated, I didn't expect that the head of the famous Xiaoyao 7, One Sword Mountain Sea, Yun Ruhan, was actually from the northern continent. Moreover, he was the previous successor of the Yun family, Yun Jifeng. Yun Jifeng again. Mu Yan frowned, what do you mean? When Qingyuan was surprised, Miss June, you really don't know? Yun Ruhan is the young master of the Yun family, Yun Jifeng, who went missing more than 10 years ago. He is also the grandson of Elder Xianyuan and the true successor of the Yun family. Although young Master Yun is still unconscious, even great Elder Xianyuan has acknowledged his identity. Now the Yun family's master and mistress are wild with joy. Mu Yan and the others looked at each other in disbelief. Even Chu Moli, who seemed to have everything in his grasp, had a blank expression on his face. What about little seven? Ling Yusheng asked. How is my seventh junior brother, Lan Luoyu? When Qingyuan shook his head. I don't know. But it's said that other than bringing back young Master Ji Feng, the Yun family also caught a spy who harmed young Master Ji Feng. I heard that the spy has already been locked up in the Yun family's water prison and is being tortured. What? The Yun family of the northern land. Young Master Ji Feng, quickly wake up. Do you know how many years I've been looking for you? The noise by her ear caused Yun Ruhan's consciousness to awaken from the swamp of chaos. He struggled to open his eyes. Soon, an old face full of wrinkles came into view. Master, Madam, Great Elder, come and see. Young Master Ji Feng woke up. Yun Ruhan frowned and struggled to get up from the bed. Feng, what do you think? Soon, the door to the room was pushed open. A beautiful woman hurried over to the bed and helped him up. Yun Ruhan dodged to the side, vigilantly saying, Who are you people? The beautiful woman was startled. Ji Feng, I am your mother. This is your father, brother, and mother. You don't recognize us? Chapter 28:31. Yun Ruhan frowned and looked in the direction the beautiful woman was pointing. The first person she saw was a middle-aged man with thick eyebrows and deep eyes. This person's cultivation was extremely high, and he unconsciously emitted a terrifying pressure. But his gaze towards her was filled with concern and nervousness. Standing behind the middle-aged man was a young man who looked somewhat similar to Yun Ruhan. His eyes were slightly lowered, making it difficult to see his expression. Young Master Ji Feng, what's wrong? The old woman tugged at Yun Ruhan nervously. This is the Yun family's patriarch and mistress, your parents. Hurry up and greet them. Yun Ruhan shook his head slowly. I don't know what you're talking about. I'm not young Master Ji Feng. As he spoke, he pressed his temples, revealing a somewhat pained expression. He was trying to remember what happened before he fainted. It was as if the blood in his body had suddenly started boiling. Then, his soul was torn apart by a huge force, causing his consciousness to become more and more muddled. In the depths of his heart, an extreme desire for flesh and blood rose up. Especially when Luo Yu was by his side. When he saw Luo Yu's white neck, his first reaction was to pounce on it and swallow the blood. Yun Ruhan was scared out of his wits by the desire in his heart. In addition, the tearing force in his soul grew stronger and stronger, and the pain and heat in his body became more and more obvious. Then, he lost consciousness. Who are you people? Yun Ruhan looked up at them. Where is this place? Where are my junior brothers and junior sisters? Ji Feng, what's wrong with you? The beautiful woman looked at him in shock. This is the Yun family. I'm your mother, Xian Menglan. Don't you remember us? The old woman cried. Poor young Master Ji Feng. He must have lost his memory, which is why he hasn't returned home for so many years. It's all that wretched villain's fault. He killed so many people from Cleansing Joy Pavilion, and harmed young Master Ji Feng. Before she could finish, the door was pushed open again. A thin old man in a blue and white robe pushed open the door and walked in. Menglan, how is Ji Feng? Father. The beautiful woman turned to see who it was. Her eyes couldn't help but redden. Ji Feng doesn't seem to remember anything. Who was it that was so vicious and merciless back then, to actually harm Ji Feng? Yun Ruhan couldn't hear the beautiful woman's cries or the comforting words of the others. The moment Yun Ruhan saw First Elder Xianyuan walk into the room, she heard a loud boom in her ears. All sounds and senses faded away in an instant. His face turned deathly pale like a sheet of paper. He knew Xianyuan. He also finally knew who Yun Jifeng was. Ji Feng, what's wrong? Young Master Ji Feng, why is your body trembling so badly? Head Elder, quickly treat young Master Ji Feng. Xianyuan walked to the bedside and took out a set of bells from his cosmos sleeve. The set of bells transformed into a half-meter-tall tower, and with a soft ring, a gentle energy entered Yun Ruhan's body. His complexion slowly improved. Ji Feng. Xianyuan looked at him deeply. You really don't remember anything? Yun Ruhan remained silent, but her hands, which were hidden in her sleeves, were trembling slightly and tightly clenched into fists. It's okay if you don't remember. After an indescribable silence, Xian Yuan suddenly smiled and patted him on the shoulder. Chapter 28-32. Even if you don't remember anything, you're still my grandson. You're the only son of your father and mother. We won't be wrong about this. Xian Menglan nodded. Although it's been more than 10 years, your appearance hasn't changed much. Also, you have the birthmark on Ji Feng's body. You're my son, Ji Feng. The old woman wiped her tears and said, Young Master Ji Feng, you didn't want to lose your memory. You should blame those who harmed you. Young Master Ji Feng, you've suffered all these years. Xian Yuan smiled again and said with a face full of gratification, Ji Feng, you really are my, Xian Yuan's, grandson. Even if you lose your memory, you can still make a name for yourself without the help of the Yun family. Ha ha ha, who would have thought that the famous one-sword mountain sea, Yun Ruhan, is my grandson? Yun Ruhan looked at his smiling face and the proud faces of Xian Menglan and the others, and didn't say anything. Xian Yuan's eyes darkened and he said, Ji Feng, since you're the eldest disciple of the Xiaoyao sect and the leader of the 7 disciples of the Xiaoyao sect, the Xiaoyao sect is not an outsider to the northern continent. I think the 7 disciples of the Xiaoyao sect should join the Clean Joy Pavilion or the Yun family. That way, your junior brothers and sisters won't have to waste their time in the carefree sect, which isn't even worth mentioning. Yun Zhaoxing looked around and said, You're right. The little guy you brought back with you is Lan Luoyu, the Thousand Hands God Summoner of the 7 disciples of the Xiaoyao sect, right? He doesn't seem to be very friendly to the Yun family, and he doesn't want to cooperate at all. Ji Feng, you should go talk to him. What did you do to little 7? Yun Ruhan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly sat up in bed. He looked at everyone with bloodthirsty and furious eyes. Where is little 7? Everyone was shocked by his sudden outburst. After a while, Yun Zhaoxing said unhappily, Is this how you talk to your father? Lan Luoyu hurt the people of the Yun family and the Clean Joy Pavilion. I brought him back and locked him up. What's wrong with that? The old woman also said anxiously, Young Master Ji Feng, don't blame Master. Blame me. I thought it was the Xiaoyao school who made you faint, so I gave the order to attack them. Yun Ruhan took a deep breath and managed to suppress the anxiety and anger in her chest. Where's Xiaoqi? Take me to him. The Yun family's water prison was dark, damp, and cold. Even those with profound cultivation could feel the bone-piercing coldness when walking inside. With the support of the old woman, Yun Ruhan became more and more anxious as they walked down. Xiaoqi had been spoiled since she was young, so how could she adapt to such an environment? After walking for a long time, he finally saw a familiar figure. This one glance caused Yun Ruhan's pupils to constrict. All the heartache, brutality, madness, and killing intent in his body surged up like a tidal wave. Water dungeon, water dungeon. As the name suggested, there was water in the dungeon. Moreover, this wasn't just any water. It was the sky-eroding water that could slowly corrode one's soul and body. Luo Yu was tied to the only stone platform in the middle of the sky-eroding water. His hands were suspended high in the air. His feet were soaked in the sky-eroding water, and his flesh was a bloody mess. There were also countless whip marks and burns on his body. As his body swayed, one could even see the white bones on his back that had been brushed by hot iron. His Xiaoqi. Chapter 28-33. Even if you don't remember anything, you're still my grandson. You're the only son of your father and mother. We won't be wrong about this. Xian Menglan nodded. It's been more than a decade, but your appearance hasn't changed much. Besides, you have the birthmark on Ji Feng's body. You're my son, Ji Feng. The old woman wiped her tears. Young Master Ji Feng, you didn't want to lose your memory. If you want to blame someone, blame those who harmed you. Young Master Ji Feng, you've suffered all these years. Xian Yuan smiled again and said with a face full of gratification, Ji Feng, you really are my, Xian Yuan's, grandson. Even if you lose your memory, you can still make a name for yourself without relying on the Yun family. Ha ha ha, who would have thought that the famous one-sword mountain sea, Yun Ruhan, would be my grandson? Yun Ruhan looked at his smiling face and the proud faces of Xian Menglan and the others, but didn't say anything. Xian Yuan's eyes suddenly darkened. Ji Feng, since you're the eldest senior of the Xiaoyao sect and the leader of the 7 disciples, the Xiaoyao sect is no longer an outsider to the northern continent. I think we should let the 7 disciples join the Cleansing Joy Pavilion or the Yun family. That way, your junior brothers and sisters won't have to waste their time in the carefree sect, which isn't even worth mentioning. Yun Zhaoxing looked around and said, you're right. The kid you brought back with you is Lan Luoyu, the thousand-hand god of the 7 disciples, right? He doesn't seem to be very friendly to the Yun family, and he doesn't want to cooperate at all. Ji Feng, you should go talk to him. What did you do to little 7? Yun Ruhan, who had been silent all this time, suddenly sat up on his bed. He looked at everyone present with bloodthirsty and furious eyes. Where is little 7? Everyone was shocked by his sudden outburst. After a moment of shock, Yun Zhaoxing said unhappily, is this how you talk to your father? Lan Luoyu injured people from the Yun family and the Cleansing Joy Pavilion. What's wrong with me bringing him back? The old woman also said anxiously, young Master Ji Feng, don't blame Master. If you want to blame someone, blame me. I thought it was the Xiaoyao school who made you faint, so I gave the order to attack them. Yun Ruhan took a deep breath and managed to suppress the anxiety and anger in her chest. Where's Xiaoqi? Take me to him. The Yun family's water prison was dark, damp, and cold. Even those with profound cultivation could feel the bone-piercing coldness when walking inside. With the support of the old woman, Yun Ruhan became more and more anxious as they walked down. Xiaoqi had been spoiled since she was young, so how could she adapt to such an environment? After walking for a long time, he finally saw a familiar figure. This one glance caused Yun Ruhan's pupils to constrict. All the heartache, brutality, madness, and killing intent in his body surged up like a tidal wave. Water dungeon, water dungeon. As the name suggested, there was water in the dungeon. Furthermore, this was no ordinary water. It was the sky-eroding water that could slowly corrode one's soul and body. Luo Yu was tied to the only stone platform in the middle of the sky-eroding water. His hands were suspended high in the air. His feet were soaked in the sky-eroding water, and his flesh was a bloody mess. There were also countless whip marks and burns on his body. As his body swayed, one could even see the white bones on his back that had been brushed by hot iron. His Xiaoqi. You're tuning into the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.